Okay,
Light a fire under him once in a while.
it is 6:58. And good evening, everyone.
There he is.
I'd like to call the Legislative Committee of the Middletown Common Council to order. It is March 1st, 2022. It is 7 p.m. I will start by taking attendance. Alderman Massey,
Here.
thank you. Alderman Green,
Here.
Alderman Tobin,
Here.
Alderwoman Ramkasoon.
Here.
Myself, all present, accounted for. As you are aware, there are two action items on this agenda, and council is ready in the soundproof booth to go over them. What's your pleasure? Which one first, sir?
Well, probably the most important one, which is the amendment of the charter for delinquent taxes.
Okay, what would you like us to know?
Well, as I've said before, we have been involved in many lawsuits now in the past few years with mortgage companies. We've had some court rulings. So the changes I'm proposing in the charter are a result of those lawsuits and the court rulings, some of which are mandatory. And I'll just briefly, explain the changes. In Section 81, we are adding a court-required mandate that when we do a tax lien auction, not just property owners, which in the past we've contacted, we have to provide notice to mortgage holders and lien holders. It's court-required, and now it's going to be in our charter. Section 81A is for bulk lien sales. We are changing that back to the reality that now the courts have ordered us to do this. So now mortgage holders and lien holders will get notice of bulk lien sales. And not only will they get notice by regular mail, it's got to be by certified return receipt requested, which is the same way that property owners get it for regular tax lien sales. Given all the lawsuits we've had, I see no ability for us to, cut corners and make it quicker. We have to do the same thing we do for regular tax lien auctions that we do for bulk lien auctions, which means certified mail return receipt requested. In Section 83, I made a change which makes it very clear, if it wasn't clear before, that all of the expenses involved in this, which there are some, especially title companies. Every time we send notices to mortgage companies or lien holders, we can only do that if we get a report from a title company. So for tax lien auctions, in the past couple of years, we have unofficially, without changing the charter, been getting reports from title companies, and we have to pay for it. We are making very clear right now that all of these changes are going to be, involving title companies, involving expenses for title companies. The property owner or whoever is going to end up paying for what happens here is going to be charged with these expenses. So whatever expenses the city incurs is going to be passed on to whoever is successful in the tax lien auction or the ultimate conveyance of the property. So that's another change here. Another big change is that in the past, when we convey property, we called something a 120-day notice. That was our first official action with regard to conveying property. Now, I'm not talking about the tax lien auction. I'm talking about actually conveying the property. And our first notice was to property owners. And the notice basically said, we're giving you a notice that we are going to order a title search that is going to be passed on to you. You can avoid this title search if within the next 30 days you pay all the taxes and liens that you owe. Well, in reality, forget about the lawsuits and the court rulings. In reality, I checked with finance, and that 120-day notice was not getting us anything. Property owners who were not paying their taxes or liens, who were not obviously impressed by us giving them a notice that they're going to pay maybe $200, $300 for a title company to do a search. And we were very rarely getting any response to that. And I think while we're amending this charter, we might as well get rid of it because it wasn't accomplishing anything except making finance department do a lot of work. So that 120-day notice is now gone. What's going to happen, though, is that after the 120-day notice, we had to do a 60-day notice. And that 60-day notice was the key notice to property owners and mortgage holders and lien holders that the property was going to be conveyed unless they redeemed it. One of these court battles that we had, one of the judges indicated, well, 60 days is not enough. We disagreed, but none of the appellate courts that were involved in these cases overturned it. So even though I don't think it was really, litigated that fully, there is no sense of fighting it at this point. We might as well change our 60-day notice to a 90-day notice, which is what I've put in here. And so from now on, when property owners and mortgage holders and lien holders get notice, instead of getting the notice 60 days ahead of time, they will get it 90 days ahead of time, which I thought the 60 days was plenty, but I think the 90 days is indisputably plenty. And that's it on the major charter changes.
Okay,
Anybody
thank
has
you.
any, I mean, it is a major change. We're doing something that changes the way we've done business for many, many years. But it's as I said, it's a result of all these lawsuits and some court holdings.
Okay, it sounds like it makes sense at the first blush. Mr. Mayor, do you have anything you want us to know about this? Okay, I'm going to go around the table as a committee of the whole. Alderman Kleiner, any thoughts? Alderman Green?
Nothing.
Alderman Witt?
I did just have one question about this, about as far as in the second section, in the second item, about the notice being published for 3 weeks in the official newspaper and all that. Is that changing at all in the world because of the way of the decline of newspapers? Because if the goal is to have an audience, I would assume, to see this, I don't know if,
I'll explain it to you.
okay.
We had that for about 100 years. We had that 3-week notice. A few years ago, we changed it to try to streamline the bulk lien sales. But what I'm saying now is the 3-week notice in the papers is always been for the private tax lien auction. We changed it trying to streamline the bulk lien, but now we're going back. We're giving that 3-week notice in the newspapers, not just to the private lien auctions, but also to the bulk lien auctions, because I don't think in this day and age, with the mortgage companies challenging us, that we could defend why are we putting notice in the newspaper for private tax lien auctions and not for bulk lien auctions. We can't defend it. So I think we ought to go back to the way we always did it and put it in the newspaper for both types of auctions.
So, Mr. Witt, your question was the viability of the newspaper, right?
No, my
Not
question, the
process.
feasibility, the viability of having it in the newspaper as opposed to,
The newspaper is becoming somewhat archaic, apparently.
Well, the newspaper means whatever process the newspaper is using. So if the local paper is using an online process, it'll be in the online section.
what's that? I'm sorry.
I'm going to explain it to Mr. Smith, I think.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
The Record is our official designated paper by the Common Council. And a few years ago, we were trying, and the state may have allowed, I'm not sure, to allow some electronic media to become the designated paper. And I think that was your question. Should we be doing it only in the Record, or is there other recourse?
Correct.
And as long as the Record is the official paper, that's what we have to do.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I want to school the lawyer on that, because I know he got a little confused
No, I
when you asked the question.
I probably didn't ask it very
Everybody
well
else here
either.
understood it, except for Mr. Smith.
Okay, asked and answered. Let's move along. Alderman
I'm probably
Massey.
one of the few people that still gets the Record delivered to me personally, but
You're the guy. Oh, now we know. Alderman Tobin.
It makes sense to adjust to the court's decisions and, adjust our laws to fit. So I agree.
Alderman Jean-Francois.
Yes, my only concern is with the winning bid have to pay the additional fees. Is that gonna prevent people from bidding on these properties? Because there's gonna be additional fees that they have to pay, they didn't have to pay before.
No, first of all, these fees were always assessed by the finance office. I'm just making it clear in the charter that they have to be paid, but they were paid before, so I don't think it's really anything additional.
okay.
And it's minor compared to what they have to pay.
Okay, thank you.
Alderwoman Ram Kasoon?
I'm fine with everything.
We're good. All righty, so am I correct in understanding that as far as the members of the committee are concerned, we're ready to approve this as explained and pass it on to the council for final adoption?
Everything okay? Yes. You okay?
Anything else you want to add, Madam Treasurer Person?
I just think this will be a good streamlined process, especially because Alex has had to go through a lot and we've had to backtrack on a lot of things. And also the law that you just passed with the water sewer re-levy, I think we'll have a lot less of these issues going forward because that was a lot of the sales.
Great,
So, thank you.
thank you very much. All righty, let's move on to action item number 2. Council?
Chapter 416. What the purpose of this was basically to update this ordinance, which hasn't been updated in many years. And one of the things I've updated is basically to standardize the penalties. Some of these provisions, for example, having cars on sidewalks, had no penalties. And we learned that to our chagrin in a recent court case where we charged somebody with it and then realized, well, we don't have a penalty. And it's been that way for about 100 years. So I amended Chapter 416 to standardize the penalties the way we have for most other city violations, which is basically $150 or $1,000 maximum, with jail time of 15 days, not because we want to put people in jail necessarily, but because we want the court to have the ability to issue a warrant if somebody doesn't show up for court. The only other change really, other than the standardization of the penalties, is that I took away one of the powers of the Common Council here was to allow people to put building materials in the street. And I thought that was something that was a bit outdated. And, well, I gave that, with your blessing, hopefully, I gave that power to the Commissioner of Public Works. So that's the only other change. And I also noticed as I was reviewing this for tonight that there's a typo, Rick, in the section 416-4, and I'll correct that with Rick before it actually comes in front of the council. There's just a typo as to the section number, and that's basically it. I took out a lot of the old penalties, which involve the commissioner giving notice to people, which is just a waste of time and effort. And I standardized them that if you violate this section and you go to court and you lose, here's what the penalties are, and that's it.
Great. Thank you again. Mr. Mayor, anything you want us to know? Going around the table, Committee of the Whole, starting with Alderwoman Ram Kasoon, anything?
Everything here makes sense.
Sounds good. Alderman Jean-Francois? Alderman Tobin?
Yeah, it looks like it cleaned up the language nicely.
Alderman Massey? Alderman Witt? Alderman Green?
Good to go.
Alderman Kleiner? So just to be clear, you didn't originate the charter 100 years ago, right? That wasn't you who wrote that?
No, I'm not quite that old, Alderman,
Okay, I just wanted-
Alderman Johnson.
just for transparency.
I'm not that older than you, just so the record
Well,
is
I was there.
straight.
I just wanted to know if I remembered you, that's all.
Maybe
Touche.
younger.
All right, am I correct? The members of the committee are willing to let this pass on to the council for formal adoption? That's correct. Sounds correct. Okay, I'd like a motion to adjourn the legislative committee. Massey, Green, all in favor? Aye. Aye.